George, thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to talk today about the difference between single family home or 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, and all of that jazz when it comes to number one, having an income producing property versus having somewhere you to live in. And number two, when it comes down to your lending options. So, George is a mortgage broker. Together, we have a company that is called True Property, like in
That's
the
good.
video.
True Global
True
Property
Global
Solution.
Property Solutions. Unbelievable, like in the TikTok. See? Anyway, so we have a real estate solutions company looking to make a smooth transition for the client when they looking to acquire and all aspects in terms of the real estate transaction and or properties in New York and across the globe. Really, it is a global company. So let's start by talking about maybe the difference between the properties, between one and two family homes. Let's start by that. George, would you please share? I mean, besides the obvious, one family is one door, one set of people or one family can live in it. Two families, two sets of doors. Would you please share a little bit more in terms of what are the possibilities for lending and income producing?
Sure. So, on a single family or a two family, um, depending on what type of loan you get, you're going to need to put, if it's an FHA loan, you could do 1 to 4 families actually and put 3.5% down. If it's a conventional loan on a 1 to 2 family, I think you could put 5% down. And then above that, I think, what's two family? No, 2 family, you have to put 15% down. I'm sorry. And on a 1 family, you could put 3 to 5% down. So go ahead, Carolina.
I was gonna ask, does is that dependent upon whether you live in the property or not?
Yes, so that would be owner occupied. So if you're buying a single family home or a 2 family home and you live in the home, that's how much you would have to put down. So if you're buying them as an investment property, you're going to you can't do FHA. First of all, you'd have to do a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, and then you're going to need to put more money down. You're going to need to put on a 2 family 15% down if it's an investment property, and then do you want to go into 3 and 4 family now?
Yeah, so yeah, let's continue talking about, because we are focusing on the difference between buying a single family and a multi-family as it pertains to being able to get lending and, clearly the possibility of them being income producing as opposed to just to live in.
Yes. So if you're living in the property, it's going to be 3 to 5% down for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac on a 1 to 2 family. On a 3 to 4 family, the down payment's going to be more. And for a investment property on a 3 and 4 family is only going to be about 15% for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That's up to 4 units
Only 15% of down payment for a 3 and 4 unit
for an investment property. Yes.
for an investment. So it does not have to be owner occupied.
Not if you're not going to live in it or say you're going to live in it.
Okay, great. And then let's compare that a little bit to when we have a property which is greater. So we've gone through single family, which is single owner, single family occupied, two family, three and four. Now we're gonna move on to five and above. At which point the property is considered more in the realm of commercial property.
Correct.
At which case you're able to qualify for a different type of loan that depends upon different qualifications. So maybe let's expand on that a little bit on this one, and then we'll go backwards on the other ones as
Okay.
well.
So yeah, for anything 5 units and above, it's considered a commercial property. Um, there's several different things involved with commercial lending. Your credit's not as much of a factor anymore as it is with with the 1 to 4 unit. Um, and there's other things that come into play that a lender looks at. There's things like your debt service ratio. Um, which is your net operating income um, divided by the cost of your debt per year. So if your net operating income's 100,000 and the cost of your debt is, I don't know, 50,000, your debt service ratio would be a two, which is very, very good. Most lenders want to see at least a 1.25 to a 1.35. So the way you figure that out, that's your gross rental receipts minus all the operating expenses, gives you your net operating income. And then you take your principal and interest payments on what the mortgage is going to cost and multiply that by 12 for the year. And you divide that into your net operating income. That'll give you your debt service ratio. So typically anything under a 1.25 is going to be more difficult to get financing for. And unless there are some really good mitigating factors that make you still want to buy the property, um, you may want to relook at what they're asking as a purchase price. Um, but that's how that works. Also, things that lenders look at is it an A class, a B class, a C class, or a D class building. Obviously, A class is going to be prime, and then also the location. So, one of the things that'll help you decide that is usually the cap rate. Okay, is going to be lower for a better building in a better area, and it's going to be higher for a not so good class building like a C or a D in maybe a poorer location. Um, and then the way you get the cap rate is you go back to your net operating income and you divide that by the market value of the property, and that'll give you your cap rate. So just to give you some numbers, go ahead, Carolina. Did you have a question?
The market value, can you please, the market value is the amount that is being asked of, or the traded amount?
Yes.
Okay.
So, for example, an A class property in a good location, you could see cap rates of like 3 to 4%. And then if you have like a D class property in like a not so great location, you could see an 8 or a 9.
Wow, cap rate 8 or 9.
Yeah, so that's really good numbers wise. I mean, the higher the cap rate, um, the better the numbers are going to look. But you also have to take into consideration: are you in a bad area, a good area?
Yeah.
The type of building. If it's a D building, it may need tons of repairs. It might not be as appealing to people and draw as high of a rent as an A
Those
building.
Does the rating of the property depend solely on the condition of the property itself, whether it's new, the quality of the finishes, the features, like if it has any amenities or if it has, any elevators or whatnot? Or what does that depend upon, the rating itself?
Yeah, I mean, an A building's going to be where you're going to get your highest rents, and yeah, there's going to be more amenities. There's going to be better conditions, better taken care of. They might be newly renovated apartments or units. Um, that would lend to an A rating. Um, most of the times it's going to be stuff that's newer or recently renovated. Um, and a D building would be something that's just maybe been let go for a while. Um, that's not to say they're not good buys, because if you're going to come in and do renovations and then you could increase the rents, it could end up being, a really good deal if you get it for the right price. But you also have to take into consider the location. How close is it to main roads? How close is it to transportation? Trains and all that, airports. So there are other factors that come into play. Um, but those are some of the things you want to take a look at.
So it's interesting because this is going to backtrack a little bit in terms of the different types of property and how they're valued or how the price is established.
Yeah.
Units 1 through 4 is basically based on the comps, the comparative
Yes.
properties in the area that have traded in the previous 12 months, and they arrived at price per square foot and whatnot. But when you go to five and more units, the market price is more dependent upon the rent that is collected.
Yes.
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so in a unit where the quality of the finishes or the building is newer, the rents collected are higher, therefore the market value is higher. I guess, it's interesting to think about a D rated building, for example, but it has a higher unit count. Perhaps that's probably how you would arise at a higher cap rate, right?
Well, couple things. Let's just go back to the 1 to 4 real quick.
Okay.
So, just to give an example, if you buy a 4 unit property for, you know, $800,000, um, even if you raise the rents in that property, like say you're getting 1,000 a unit and you're able to raise it to 1,200 a unit, that's not going to have a, a really big impact on the value of that property. What's going to determine uh, the value is what other similar 4 unit buildings close by have sold for in the last 6 to 12 months. Um, so you're more dependent on your neighbors as far as what the value of those properties are. The 5 units and above, and a D class building is a good example. Um, if you got a building that's been neglected for a while and nothing's been updated, um, you may still want to take a look at that because there could be opportunity there.
Mhm.
Um, you may be getting $900 a unit right now for rent. The rents have never been raised or they haven't been raised in a long time. Nothing's really been updated. And if you could get that for a good price and do and update everything and turn that D building into maybe, a B building and raise the rents to maybe 12 or 1300, that could be a major increase in the value of that property because it's not dependent really on sales of other buildings in the area like it is with a 1 to 4 unit. It's going to be dependent on now what do the numbers look like. So you could go from, you know, a debt service ratio of 1.3, and now after you do all the upgrades and everything, you may be at like a 1.9, and you could go back to the bank and refinance at a 1.3 and pull money out, and now you got your initial investment back plus, in some cases. So there's lots of ways to massage the numbers and to look at these investment properties, but the 5 units and above, you could get much more creative, and there's much more opportunity, in my opinion.
Okay. Um, but it's interesting too because it seems to me that in the 1 to 4, the opportunity to increase the value in the property requires a further great investment, because to really upgrade a unit to the point where it gets to be like another category, like recently renovated, brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, so that you can actually compare it to units that are alike, that have traded at higher. That would be the way to go about it. But it seems that in a higher doors complex, higher doors buildings where there's more units, five or more, you can simply, make a couple of adjustments to be able to raise the rent and then increase the value of the property.
Yeah, there's more
So,
in a commercial situation. There's a lot more cosmetic stuff you can do to justify raising the rent, right? Like you could go in, maybe just, if there's carpet, maybe just put hardwood floors, paint the place, right? Um, and then you can justify raising the rents, which can drastically increase the value of that property. In a 1 to 4 unit, if you put hardwood floors and you paint, it's not going to have that much of an impact on the value. You would have to do things in a 1 to 4 unit, like you said, put a brand new kitchen, redo the bathrooms. All those are expensive ticket
mhm.
items.
Yeah.
And even then, you're still restrained by what other people have sold for. You know, there's only so much of an adjustment that can be made for those things. Um, Good.
No, I was just gonna say, so if somebody had the money to put to either buy two units or one 5 unit, they're probably much better off to get a greater return on their investment a little sooner to do the 5 unit. Would you say?
Well, yeah,
Depending upon.
it's one property, which is easier to maintain. Um, you know, you have one roof, not two roofs. You have, you
Hmm.
know, everything is doubled when, for the most part, when you have two separate properties. Um, so that's one thing. But you do have to look at the numbers. I mean, I'm not going to say a 1 to 4 unit never makes sense, because
Yeah, of
the
course.
numbers make sense. The numbers make sense. You know.
Of course.
So in both situations, you would have to evaluate.
Depending
Um,
upon.
and the advantage of a 1 to 4 unit is, if you buy a 4 unit and you're going to live in one of them, you don't have to put as much money down in most cases as you do
Yeah.
with the 5 unit. On a 5 unit and above, you're typically going to have to put, best case scenario would be 10%, but that's rare. Um, Possibly 15%. It's usually going to be 20 to 25% is where you're going to fall for 5 units and above as a down payment. So that could be limiting to some people. Whereas, you know, a 1 to 4 unit, if you're going to, well, 1 unit, if you're going to live in it, there is no investment. But, you know, a 2, 3, or 4 unit that you're going to live in, you could rent the other units, and you could put 3.5% down, 3%, 5%. You know, it's going to be much less of a down payment for an owner occupied property.
Hmm. Makes sense. Um, I'm trying to think. Does anybody have any questions of the people that are on Instagram? Okay. Yeah, so pretty much that's it in a nutshell. I mean, it seems that buying a multi-family, if you're looking to do it for investment purposes, especially the fact that it's not so dependent upon credit, might be sometimes a good idea if you have the cash to be able to put the down payment on more units. Might be a really good alternative for some people that may have funds but may be more concerned with their credit score.
And on the flip side, while it does require more of a down payment on a 5 unit and above, there's a lot more opportunity to get that money back quicker, and plus, sometimes plus, right? So if you do some upgrades, if you raise the rents, now you go back to the bank, like I said, and you're able to refinance. Um, you can, in a lot of cases, pull all that money back out. If you raise the rents like maybe 200 or $250 a unit, you should be able to get pretty much all your money, and maybe a little bit more back of that down payment. So, whereas with a 1 to 4, it's going to be more difficult to do that. So, if you do have the money, there's more opportunity of that money not being tied up so longly. Then you could take it and go buy another one after you refinance.
Yeah. And something that we haven't even touched upon, but is very true too, is the reason why the lending institutions are willing to do this is because when you have more units, there's less risk. If one of the units is empty, you're not losing most of your investment by not collecting rent for a few months. The more units you have, the more you're able to sort of find balance between vacancy rate and the units that you're collecting rent on.
Yeah, well, think of it this way: if you have 10 units and two people don't pay, that's a 20% loss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have three
Mm-hmm.
units and one person doesn't pay, that's a 33% loss. You know, and usually a property should be able to carry a 20% vacancy if, you know, if you end up in that situation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
usually lenders are going to lend based off of that, like a 75 to 80% occupancy. Um, so they kind of account for it also. So you should still, on a larger unit property, be able to have positive cash flow, even if you have a 15% or even a 20% vacancy. So if people aren't paying, you have to evict them. You know, and you're vacant for a little bit, you'll be able to absorb that more than you would with a smaller property.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true.
There's
That's true.
less risk. There's less
Mhm.
risk in a bigger
Yeah.
unit.
And also in terms of managing, I mean, when you have to, have whether it's property management or whether you do it yourself, there's an advantage to having more units because then you're getting certain discounts or rates, or you're just hiring a company to do the managing of like 10 or 20 units as opposed to two.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I would say if someone has the money and they're just starting out, I would look for like maybe between 8 and 16 units at first, if you could do that. Um, if you're going to go a little less than that, try to stay at least at six because it's just safer, you know, if you have problems with collecting the rent,
mhm, mhm,
especially if it's your first property. Once you get
mhm,
up to 20, 30, 40 units and more, you're always going to be okay because you're never going to have that many people not paying at the same time. You're always going to be positive cash flow.
mhm,
Should be if
mhm.
the deal was right.
Yeah, that's true. Anyone else has any questions?
Never have questions. We're so good at these kind of things.
Do you think there's anything that, I mean, we could, talk about different things, but I think for this sort of segment, right? This is good. We've addressed down payment and types of loans and types of properties.
Yeah, if you one thing to mention, and you may want to speak about this, when you start getting above 4 units into commercial, there's a lot of stuff that's not listed. That's
Mhm,
you're not going to find online. You're not going to be able to find on your own. You really need to find a commercial realtor that has access to that information because a lot of times those are, some of the better deals actually. And that commercial realtor is going to be able to help you to identify what you're looking for and, show you more inventory than you're going to be able to find on your own.
mhm. Yeah, plus they'll be familiarized with some particulars in terms of the property itself.
Right. And
If
the area.
Yeah, the area, but also like, if one of the parts of the building it's a retail or whatnot. There's just a lot. The more knowledge you can have at your fingertips, always the better, or with whomever you're working. Always the more informed you can be, the more confident you'll feel about your decision, and the better you'll be in the long run.
Yeah. And a commercial realtor is going to be able to help educate you on, you know, what the rents should be or could be.
Mhm.
They're going to give you a lot of information that you can utilize when making a decision on whether a property, uh, is a good deal or not, and you want to move forward on it. So
Mhm.
I would highly recommend that you definitely work with a commercial broker.
Mhm. Great.
We're good.
I think we're good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us as usual. And we love doing this. We love sharing whatever information we can to help you guys. And, if you ever have questions, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to, help and assist you however we can.
Our telephone number is down there if you need to take note.
Hmm.
For Instagram, you can connect to us via our page, link in bio. There's a link tree
Yeah.
where you can find all of the information you need. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Carolina.
you. Thank you, George.
All right.
Bye.